fresh meat.
Few slasher films strike the same chord that My Bloody Valentine does. In a world of Halloween copycats, this film stands out above the rest with its layered characters, memorable villain, and mind-blowing gore. It's often heralded as a more mature slasher film. Today on What the F*** Happened to This Unmade Horror Movie, we're looking at the bloody sequel we never got with The Return of the Miner. Before we can go through the different versions of its proposed sequel, let's go over the original My Bloody Valentine. Written by John Beard from a story by Stephen A. Miller and directed by George Mihalka, the film was set in the city of Valentine Bluffs. The Canadian town had banned the annual Valentine's Day party after a tragic incident years prior. You know, murder. But it's finally ready to celebrate again. Unfortunately for them, a killer miner shows up and starts taking citizens of the town out, culminating in the ultimate showdown in the mines. It's a great whodunit where you don't know if it's the original killer, Harry Warden, or someone else entirely. Axel. Well, it turns out to be Axel, one of the miners, who had been traumatized by the original killings. Oh, and he loses an arm for his troubles.
Sarah, be my bloody Valentine.
But he still survives it. TJ and Sarah are some of the only survivors. I mean, other than all of these people that got away, and Chief Dansby. The film ends on such a cliffhanger that a sequel seemed obvious. Then you add to it the praise that the film has received from fans, and it's even more surprising that no sequel exists. If you're interested in finding out more on this film, check out our Real Slashers episode, which covers it all, and makes it even more confusing as to why we never got a sequel. But that wasn't due to a lack of trying. I want to thank you guys for watching What the F*** Happened to This Unmade Horror Movie, and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now, like this video, and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. And now, back to the show. The direction of any sequel just could never be agreed upon. Mihalka saw the success of the first film as being due to the story being about working class adults and not teenagers. It was relatable. But producer John Dunning wanted a sequel about teenagers being killed off by a miner. That was more in line with all of the other slashers of the era. And given how much money those were raking in, Dunning's logic made sense. But Mihalka wasn't interested in chasing trends. Instead, he wanted to focus on what made the original film so good in the first place. And that wasn't a group of characters that couldn't even vote.
How did you ever get to be so stupid?
Return of the Miner came in many different forms over the years. The first incarnation saw no characters from the original film return. Instead, it would have just featured a different miner behind the murders, and the only connection would be that it took place in the town of Valentine Bluffs. One version saw Sarah becoming the new sheriff of the town. A little odd because I didn't know that she was into law enforcement, but okay. She and TJ are now married and have started a family, with their teen sons being the main focus of the story. The dying town decides to turn the old mine into a carnival attraction. Not only that, but the carnival would be entirely based around the miner, even selling merch like toy pickaxes. Needless to say, Sarah and TJ are not happy about this and try to put a stop to it. This would have mixed both the grounded world that Mihalka wanted with TJ and Sarah, while Dunning would have gotten his more direct slasher movie with the teens. Much like the original, the third act took place down in the mines, except it's the teenagers stuck down with the miner. The carnival ride aspect would have provided some interesting visuals, and it likely would have resulted in a bit better lighting. Unfortunately, all forms of Return of the Miner came to a halt when John Dunning was hit by a car while riding his bike. Since Dunning was often the driving force behind the sequel, and with his health rapidly declining, progress halted. After Dunning passed away in 2011, as did the hopes of a teen slasher sequel. But that's not to say our story ends here. Just 2 years ago, George Mihalka resumed work on his sequel, now titled Valentine Wakes. While it's not quite as obvious of a name as Return of the Miner, Valentine Wakes is actually a pretty clever title. The story revolves around the annual remembrance of the terrible events of the first film, hence the Wakes portion. Like Dunning's story before it, Mihalka's deals with Sarah and TJ. They're now married and Sarah runs a hardware store, a little more likely than being sheriff of the town. TJ has some pretty serious PTSD. This has caused him to become a bit of an alcoholic, so the family isn't doing well. They have a daughter, seemingly together, but it's later revealed that Sarah was actually impregnated by Axel when they were a couple. This means she spends the film grappling with whether or not her father being some killer means that she's destined for the same thing. It's an interesting dilemma for her to ponder. And the plotline was even done in a recent horror movie, but we won't tell you which one because we don't want to spoil anything. Axel is still alive and he's been rehabilitated, so much so that he's been released from the insane asylum that he's been in for the past few decades. How he got out of prison for all of those people he murdered in 1981 is anyone's guess. Movie logic, I suppose. He returns to the town of Valentine Bluffs and is an obvious suspect once the killings start up again. And this is where the whodunit aspect gets reintroduced to the tale.
Harry Warden, he's here! Everybody get the fuck out! Go!
Is Axel murdering people? Is it someone new? Or is it something truly fantastical and Harry Warden is returning from the grave to exact revenge? Yeah, I'm thinking that last one is pretty unlikely. As it turns out, Axel is not the new killer, and is instead hoping to find the real culprit, as some sort of penance for his crimes. You can already see how much this would rile up an alcoholic TJ, especially when he's already suffering from PTSD. Just add in a paternity test and you've got one fascinating episode of Maury. One of the best aspects of the script is the teen's dismissal of the tragedy in 1981. Having occurred long before they were born, they don't take it nearly as seriously as those that lived through it. There's even speculation about whether it even happened or not. Given the current climate, this could go into some really interesting places. It's this kind of social commentary that horror is known for. Plus, I don't know about you, but it fills me with joy to see some snot-nosed punk saying Harry Warden isn't real, only for him to take a pickaxe to the chest. But this is where the solid information on the film ends. No ending was mentioned, so we're only left to wonder who exactly the killer was in this proposed version.
We're coming back, you bastards!
Given all the pieces that have been set up, I'd say it makes the most sense to have TJ revealed as the new killer, as he punishes those who disrespect his fallen friends. Seeing as how TJ was one of the final suspects in the original, and Mihalka even toyed with the idea of swapping in TJ as the killer, this feels like the most obvious choice. I suppose only time will tell. Neil Affleck and Lori Hallier are both still in the industry, and with the recent Hollywood obsession with requels, bringing them back makes sense. Unfortunately, Paul Kellman passed away just this past month, so he wouldn't be able to return to the role of TJ, which he had made so memorable. While we never received a sequel, we did get a remake from the team of Patrick Lussier and Todd Farmer. This movie kicks all kinds of ass, so if you're wanting to see more minor slashings, it's really your only option outside of the original. If you want to find out more on that, check out our deconstructing on the film. There had been rumors of a sequel to that remake for many years, but at this point, all hope seems to be lost at returning to that world. Some recent interviews with George Mihalka indicate he's currently developing Valentine Wakes himself. While that means he would have to negotiate the rights with both Paramount and Lionsgate, George claims all parties are interested. So despite its 40-year anniversary passing just this last year, a sequel has never been closer to happening than right now. Whether any of these iterations ever come to fruition, we can at least be grateful for the time we spent back in 1981 in the town of Valentine Bluffs. Because amongst the sea of standard slasher movies, this gem from Canada has stood the test of time. While that never resulted in the franchise that some would have hoped, we were left with a slasher that fans are still passionate about to this day. And really, you can't ask for more than that.
Forget about having a party at all on Saturday night. You may not live to see daylight.
What other unmade horror movies do you want to see us talk about? List them below and we'll see you in the next episode.